Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a story I guarantee you know, Aladdin. But we're going to trace its journey from, innocent classroom lessons all the way to the center of a pretty complex academic debate. It's a classic fairy tale, sure, but as we peel back the layers, you're going to see there's a lot more hiding inside that magic lamp.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with its status as a global fairy tale and the origins of the magic lamp. Then we'll enter Disney's Agrabah, apply what's called the Orientalist lens, decode some harmful stereotypes, and finally, rethink the classic tale.
All right, part 1, a global fairy tale. To really understand Aladdin's impact, we actually have to look at how universally embedded it is in childhood education. Take French textbooks, for example. What's really fascinating here is how they use the marriage of Aladdin and the Sultan's daughter to teach basic language comprehension. Like, they use the familiarity of the story to help kids grasp new words in context, like le gendre, which is French for the son-in-law.
And it brilliantly illustrates just how innocent this narrative appears on the surface, right? In another matching exercise for the word un tailleur, a tailor, the story is literally just functioning as a fun, engaging vehicle for teaching reading skills to young learners. It feels completely harmless.
Moving on to part 2, origins of the magic lamp.
Because beyond those simple language exercises, the original story has some incredibly deep narrative roots that span centuries and continents. It originally stems from oral storytelling. In fact, it wasn't even in the oldest Arabic versions of 1001 Nights. It got added in the 18th century by a French translator named Antoine Galland, who actually heard it from a Syrian storyteller. Fast forward to 1992, Disney releases its global blockbuster. And now, in 2024, modern scholars are looking back and critically analyzing the cultural representations embedded in this exact story.
But before we get into the modern critique, we really have to acknowledge why the story resonated so universally in the first place. According to Arabic literary summaries, the heart of the tale teaches kids that a person's true worth comes from their inner courage and good intentions rather than, say, magic or immense wealth. It shows that power has to be used for good, which stands in sharp contrast to the evil magician. So fundamentally, these are absolutely fantastic, rock-solid morals.
Which brings us to part 3, enter Disney's Agrabah.
Those positive morals? They are exactly what made the 1992 Disney adaptation such a massive global phenomenon. The story is so beloved that elementary school activity guides, like the French Ribambelle curriculum, actively encourage kids to use household items to mimic Middle Eastern characters. They suggest using scarves as turbans or putting on black eyeshadow for beards just so kids can act out the roles. It's presented purely as a joyful exercise in imagination.
But this brings us to a really crucial crossroads. Researchers are now asking, is this classic tale actually masking a deeply flawed worldview? Like when kids paint on beards and put on makeshift turbans, what cultural ideas are they really absorbing underneath it all?
Let's look at part 4, the Orientalist lens. To answer that question impartially, academics turn to a very specific theoretical framework to evaluate how the West historically depicts the East. The crucial concept here is Orientalism. Defined by scholar Edward Said back in 1978, it basically acts as a lens, showing us how Western media historically lumps incredibly diverse Eastern cultures into a single stereotyped monolith. Essentially, the West generated this idea of the Orient as exotic or backward to make themselves appear more advanced and civilized by contrast.
And Said really hit the nail on the head when he wrote, "Television, the films, and all the media's resources have forced information into more and more standardized molds." That quote highlights the core academic concern here. The fear is that a massive media empire, like Disney, standardizes and solidifies a highly generalized, inaccurate view of the Middle East and broadcasts it to global audiences who just accept it as truth.
So, let's dive into part 5, decoding harmful stereotypes.
When researchers actually apply this Orientalist lens directly to the 1992 film Aladdin, they uncover a wide array of geographical and cultural inconsistencies that honestly, a lot of us probably missed as kids. The study proves that the filmmakers didn't represent a cohesive culture. They kind of just stitched together a fantasy world from entirely different continents. The Sultan's Palace, that's based on the Taj Mahal, which is in India. The clothing is pulled from the Ottoman Empire. And Iago, the talking parrot, that species actually originates in Australia or the Dominican Republic. It visually flattens all these rich, distinct cultures into one generic Eastern aesthetic.
Furthermore, the study points out that the film is just packed with rapid-fire exotic tropes. I mean, within the first few minutes, we see men blowing fire, walking on hot coals, and casually lying on beds of nails. We see tigers and monkeys kept as common house pets, and palace guards literally trying to physically mutilate Princess Jasmine, trying to cut off her hand just for taking an apple. The academic analysis argues this paints the East as this barbaric, violent spectacle, rather than a real, nuanced society.
The paper's critical discourse analysis also highlights a rather troubling racial binary. Westernized voices and physical features are coded as good, while stereotypical Eastern traits are coded as evil. Aladdin and Jasmine feature American-sounding accents and are drawn with lighter traits. Meanwhile, the villain Jafar is described narratively as dark and sinister, and he speaks with a thick, exaggerated foreign accent. It's subtle, but it reinforces a specific bias in the viewer.
And why this matters so much is because these representations have a massive real-world scale. Critics noted that the film's original opening song contained lyrics claiming people would cut off your ear if they don't like your face because it's barbaric, but hey, it's home. That actively insulted over 300 million Arab people. The public outcry was so significant, the studio was actually forced to alter the track for subsequent releases.
Finally, Part 6. Rethinking the Classic Tale.
Knowing all of this, where does it leave us with a story that has brought so much joy to generations? Well, researchers suggest we don't have to just completely erase the story, but we do need to reframe it. We can totally still enjoy the core moral lessons of courage and inner value. But moving forward, we should actively acknowledge the historical misrepresentations, decipher that Orientalist subtext when we consume mainstream media, and, most importantly, educate ourselves on the real, wonderfully diverse cultures of the East.
Ultimately, it leaves us to ponder, how do we continue to share the magic of classic fairy tales with the next generation while ensuring we don't pass down a flawed worldview? It's a tricky balance between our nostalgia for the magic lamp and the very real responsibility of representing global cultures accurately. Thanks for tuning into this explainer. Keep questioning the media you consume and keep seeking out the true stories behind the magic.